That's what I think is so interesting about Lyme disease is that it hides from your immune system so well.
Yep, I totally agree. Absolutely. And, it's interesting with Lyme, they call it the great imitator, and it can have over 300 different symptoms. And I think that's why it makes it so difficult for doctors to diagnose, because it's not like one set of symptoms.
You're tuned in to the Dr. Kinney Show, and I'm your host, Dr. Erin Kinney, a naturopathic doctor and speaker dedicated to unraveling the mysteries of your body and guiding you back into balance. Let's get started.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Dr. Kinney Show. This week, I'm pleased to have joining me Erika Schlick, who is a certified health coach, blogger, and cookbook author. And she's a really cool journey that she's going to share. We're going to chat about, and I'm so excited to have you on the show to hear about your story. How are you doing?
Awesome. Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited for this podcast.
Yeah. So maybe you can start by sharing with the listeners your journey, because as I said, you have a really cool one on how you got into this space and what you do now.
Sure. Yeah. I'll try to keep it short. It was a long journey, but I'll give you the Cliff Notes version here.
Yeah.
In 2012, I went on my third camping trip ever of my life. And after that trip, I was never quite the same. I had kind of a flu that would come and go. And after that, all these strange symptoms kind of started creeping in. I started having joint pain and brain fog and became allergic to so many foods. And I developed a few other autoimmune diseases, including celiac disease, alopecia, Hashimoto's. Doctors could not figure out what was wrong with me. So after about 2 years of, I don't want to call them misdiagnosis, because I was also diagnosed with them, but they weren't my actual root cause. My doctor finally decided to test me for Lyme disease, which I was actually one of the lucky ones that got diagnosed so soon. And I was CDC positive for Lyme, which is kind of, the testing is very inaccurate. So it's pretty rare to get that. So I knew for sure that was what I was dealing with. So once I knew I had Lyme, that kind of started like the second phase of my journey, if you will, that was focused on Lyme. With that, we also uncovered that I also had mold toxicity, heavy metal toxicity, and like a lot of other things going on. So I treated Lyme for about 3 years, also kind of focusing on detox and things like that. And I kind of hit a plateau. I got to about 65% better, and the treatments just weren't kind of making the same progress anymore. So I knew I had to do something kind of big and drastic. I was considering going to Germany for hyperthermia or doing something else. So I actually ended up going to Germany and doing stem cell therapy using my own stem cells. And it took about 10 months to heal with that, but that was what finally got me into remission. I've been in remission for about 5 years now. Still feeling good. I still deal with like the autoimmune stuff that I have to manage, but that's mostly kind of controlled at this point. Mold is still a big trigger. If I go into a building that has mold, that definitely sets off a little bit of an immune and inflammation cascade. But for the most part, I live a pretty healthy, normal life, kind of just keeping up with my health and maintenance. And yeah, here I am. So now I've kind of evolved. I have a blog. I do health coaching. So I help to support people on a similar journey, dealing with Lyme, mold, kind of unknown illness, and kind of talking to your doctor about what the right tests to run are to try to uncover what your root cause might be. And also work with people with diet. I have celiac disease thanks to Lyme. I found that diet was a really big part of my journey. So going paleo and eating really nutrient dense foods, clean foods really helped my inflammation and just feel better. And I ended up writing a cookbook in 2018, kind of encompassing all those recipes to help share that with other people on journeys as well.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that story. I think it's so nice. And again, for listeners, if you're listening, you're struggling, there usually is an answer. You just got to keep digging to find it. And again, you were lucky that you did test so positive to Lyme, because sometimes that's not the case. I diagnose a lot of Lyme, and I maybe see a positive CDC Western blot like 1 out of 50 cases. Like it does happen, but usually people have like 1 or 2 bands, or maybe they don't have any bands at all, but they have some other markers and they have lots of weird symptoms. Yeah. I love that you shared that there was also mold and heavy metals, and maybe you can talk a little bit about, if you want to share some of your experience with the connection between those, because it's very common that those are seen together, that Lyme usually doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's usually not by itself. There's usually, and like you shared that your Lyme like triggered another autoimmune. And that's what I think is so interesting about Lyme disease is that, and I always try to explain this to my patients, and I'd love to get your take on it too, is that it hides from your immune system so well, and it'll hide in different tissues, and your immune system, like, it knows it's there. It's like, I know there's something there and I'm trying to find it. And sometimes while it's doing that, it ends up attacking parts of your own body because it's trying to find and kill the Lyme. So it can activate and turn on. I see Lyme being the underlying root cause of Hashimoto's for a lot of people, or rheumatoid arthritis, or other autoimmune type things where, again, there's Because in my mind, the body doesn't wake up one day and just decide, hey, I'm going to start attacking my joints. I don't like those anymore. Like, that's not how it's not what we're designed to. No, the body is designed to heal. It is not designed to attack itself.
Yeah.
So, and then it's almost like when you have this, my patients sometimes are like, whoa, my body's actually been trying to protect me this whole time. I thought it hated me. It hated itself, but it actually has been trying to kill something that was bothering it or living there that shouldn't be.
Yep, I totally agree. Absolutely. And, it's interesting with Lyme, they call it the great imitator, and it can have over 300 different symptoms. And I think that's why it makes it so difficult for doctors to diagnose, because it's not like one set of symptoms. And I think it really kind of goes to your weakest areas. Like you said, like for some people it goes into your thyroid, which might already be compromised maybe from mold or environmental toxins or something. And then all of a sudden, it's attacking there and hiding there, and you have autoimmunity. Like for me, it was like the celiac disease and the gut issues, and for other people it's RA in the joints. So I definitely feel like it's a huge trigger for a lot of autoimmune conditions, just something that your body, and it also, I kind of like think of our immune system and our bodies kind of as a bank account almost. Like there's only so much you can take, and at a certain point it's just going to spill over and your body's not going to be able to handle it anymore. And that's when like the mold comes out, or, the Lyme comes out, or some other thing.
Other viral infections.
Or something.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I love that you said the bank account. I like to use that analogy or that kind of concept a lot. It's like, your body only has a certain budget to keep all those things at bay. And if you go through, let's say, a global pandemic and your stress goes through the roof, that you might spend a lot of that energy that it might otherwise have been keeping, particularly the viral space. I feel like, because Lyme is weird. It is a bacteria, technically. I mean, it acts a little bit by a virus, but you can get rid of it. Like, you can. It can sometimes take a long time to be like, there could be some other things. And I think a lot of chronic Lyme stuff, I don't know, my personal opinion, and I'd like to hear your opinion, because I always am curious what other people think about this. My opinion is that you can get rid of the Lyme bacteria. A lot of the chronic Lyme symptoms are because Lyme has weakened or lowered that bank account, if you will. And there's all these other things that need to be addressed. Like I find people with Lyme, there's usually several other viral loads that are high. And so when they start to get symptomatic, it's like their EBV is reactivating, or cytomegalovirus, or HHV6, or their mold, whatever they had to do with mold. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think
No, I agree. I mean, I don't know if you can get rid of every single last Lyme bacteria, but, I think...
You think sometimes there'll be like a small percent still there?
Yeah, but it's interesting. I mean, there's nothing really that kills Lyme. Like even if they give you doxycycline, it just slows the replication cycle so your immune system can kill it. So really, your immune system is the best killer
what's doing
of Lyme.
It. Yeah.
But can your immune system find every single last Lyme bacteria and kill it? I don't know.
Well, that's a good.
I would love for that to happen.
Yeah.
But,
I think I always like to think optimistically about the body. Like, yeah, you can do that. But it is interesting, like symptomatically, like patients with chronic Lyme will, they'll be like, I'm feeling good, but then they sometimes will flare a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say, because our testing is it's not super accurate. So it's hard to know, is that symptom that you're having, is it because we didn't kill all of it, or is it because of something else?
Yeah.
I always have a hard time when I sit down with someone. I'm like, I think you have Lyme, or they're asking me to test for Lyme. And I'm like, well, I can't 100% tell you that you have it in a lot of cases. But I can't 100% tell you that you don't have it. It's just, it's a tricky animal to deal with.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest things that the Lyme world needs is obviously like more accurate testing, better testing, and definitely education for practitioners as well, because so many doctors don't believe in Lyme or don't want to test for it, or they use the, traditional like ELISA test, which misses 50% of cases. So it's really doing a big disservice. And I think everyone that has an autoimmune condition, anyone that has kind of mystery disease, that should be one of the first tests they do. But even if it's negative, not rule out that you don't.
Not rule it out. Yeah.
Just consider it, kind of put it in your back pocket and, explore some other things. But if you're still not making progress, maybe revisit that, or do a challenge and do some herbs or something to kind of
wake it up. Yeah.
Trigger it and see if that worsens or betters or, makes any shift in how you're feeling, because it's just one of those things you just kind of have to guess and check, I feel like, until we have a better test.
Well, I like what you said, because I sometimes I'll get like kind of an ambiguous result back. I'm like, okay, they had several bands, and I use a lot of like immune markers, like a CD57 marker, or there's the complement cascade, or there's a couple other things that tell me or tell practitioners like how your immune system is acting. They're very, very general markers, and I've probably talked about these on the show before, but they are not technically diagnostic labs. They can give you some information. If those are off and you have a couple Lyme bands and you've got a lot of weird mystery symptoms, it's like, in my mind, I'm like, oh, there maybe is something we want to be thinking about. But sometimes the way to like further investigate that is to say, okay, I'm going to put you on a treatment protocol that should make you feel better. But if you don't, like usually sometimes I'll work on someone's adrenals or work on something else, or I work on their thyroid. And if they don't respond at all, that's a big sign to me, like, okay, something else is that's like pointing heavily to particularly Lyme.
Yeah.
Because usually with Lyme, I find, I'm sure, like, I feel like people don't respond to their thyroid medication. They don't respond to adrenal treatment. They don't respond to the typical treatment of other symptoms or other systems being off. Like, because of their body, and I think it, like that analogy they use, their body is so hell-bent on trying to find the Lyme that it's like, I don't have time for any of these other things. I can't do that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then one thing to add to that too, you could be negative for Lyme disease, but there's so many other co-infections. There's over 300 strains of Lyme as well. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. There's like tick-borne relapsing fever, Babesia, Bartonella, all these other things that, and different strains of Lyme as well that those tests aren't even testing for. So you may not have,
conventional Lyme.
Right. Yeah. But you could have one of these other strains or one of these other co-infections that is basically doing the same thing to your body, wreaking havoc on your immune system, hiding from your immune system, doing all these things, but you're not being tested for those things. So I think that's another thing to keep in mind, when everyone's like, oh, I've been tested for Lyme, I don't have it, but you still have all these symptoms and you're getting worse and they're not going away. Be like, okay.
Go get some more further to. Yeah, exactly. I've seen a huge increase in Rocky Mountain spotted fever in the last 2 years. Yeah. I don't know if that's something that
relapsing fever here in California has been really big too.
Well, that's the thing. I sometimes get patients, especially I've got some patients in California, they're like, oh, we don't have ticks here. I'm like, no, it doesn't matter. There's ticks everywhere.
In California.
Yeah, right. You practice in California, so right, like
and I got in at Yosemite, so there's definitely ticks there. The Bay Area is really bad too. Like, I mean, there was a study recently, I think that Bay Area Lyme Foundation did, like ticks on the coastal areas, like especially like Santa Cruz and like some of the Northern California coastal areas, that there was like ticks in all the high grasses there, and it was a very high risk area. So, I live here in LA, and our neighbors across the street had a tick on their dog. And so they're just everywhere, birds carry them around, squirrels and rodents carry them around, like birds are migrating from areas that are highly endemic. So, to think that, oh, there's no ticks here, I'm never going to get it here is a really naive thought. And, they're so tiny. They can be the size of a poppy seed. And like most people don't even see it, or, they like to see it in your scalp or your armpit or your groins. And like, you already have darker hair there generally. So like,
you might not notice.
And like only 50% of people, they say, get the rash. Yeah. So you may never know that you even got bit.
Yeah.
And then, start having these weird symptoms. And, like me, I'm a total city person. Like, how would I have Lyme? I've gone camping 3 times in my life. Like 3 nights total in my whole life, probably, and like, how did I get it? So,
well, and there's
more common than people like to think.
It is more common than people like to think. I sometimes like laugh. I'm like, how is it? I wanted to go into I loved hormone. When I first was like, oh, I want to go to practice. I love thyroid and I love adrenal stuff, and I love, balancing women's hormones. But I test for so many infectious diseases because so many women come in and they've tried all these treatments to get their thyroid medication doesn't work. They know they have a thyroid condition, but we end up finding out that the reason why their hormones can't get into balance is because their body's spending all this energy trying to fight an infection. And I've talked about this a lot. I've had several other episodes where I talk about like the importance of looking at infectious stuff when you have hormonal imbalance. Not that it's the cause for all of those cases, but it can be a big one, particularly if you're not responding to, like, if you've tried the normal things that tend to work to get your hormones into balance.
Yeah.
But I had something else I was going to say and I just lost it. Oh, I was going to say that back to what you're saying, that you don't think that you can completely, like, that your body maybe can't completely get rid of it and that your immune system is a shock. Sometimes I've had cases where people are like, I 100% know I haven't had a tick bite since I was like 5. There's no way I've had this since I was 5. I only got sick 2 years ago. Like, well, maybe your body dealt with 90% of it, or you took a course of antibiotics at some point in your life, but maybe there was a little bit, and now you lived in a moldy house, or you went through a stressful time, or you got Epstein-Barr virus, or something else happened, which allowed the Lyme to replicate, to kind of come out. So, which makes it a more difficult thing to diagnose, because if people are like, no, I've never had a tick bite, most doctors are like, oh, I'm not going to check for that. Yeah. But I think if they do, they may not even test positive, because most of the tests are antibody tests anyway. So your immune system has to be healthy and strong enough to even be making antibodies to even be looking for it. Like, half the time you may have it, and your immune system is so cached from like dealing with all these things that it's not even able to like make antibodies. It's not mounting the response, right? Exactly. So, and that's a great point. Like, a lot of times people do come up either with 0 bands or like you don't test positive, because our tests look at the body's response, not at the actual bacterial level. Going back to like and I know there are a couple of labs that do tests, but they're very, very expensive. And, I think they're questioned a little bit more in the medical field. So it becomes a little bit tricky depending on what kind of practitioner you're working with. Like if you bring one of these kind of more out of the box labs, but I hope that we get more testing available because it would be nicer to have, because I think so many people, particularly in the past couple of years, I don't know if you've seen an increase. I just feel like because of all the stress and COVID being a big like immune zap that, steals that energy that we've talked about, a lot of Lyme cases, I think, have gotten reactivated.
And I wonder how many people with long hauler issues actually have underlying Lyme.
Yes.
I know there's one doctor that I'm connected to, and she started getting a lot of long hauler patients, and she started testing them all for tick-borne diseases, and they were all coming up positive. And, you start seeing these people, they're saying that they're having POTS issues and heart issues and all these symptoms and brain fog and the fatigue. And you're like, that sounds exactly
like Lyme. Or
did they get COVID and it woke up Lyme and they already had that, and their immune system was just kind of keeping it at bay and they were functioning, and then all of a sudden something just overloaded their system and it all came out,
Yeah. On a positive note, I did have one patient. I just thought I'd share this story because I think this is cool. I had a patient with pretty bad chronic Lyme, and we've been treating it for maybe a year or two, and she would kind of get better, and then, she'd get sick again. And we were kind of just always like, it was like we'd get her immune system up to a place and then her immune system would take a dip. She got COVID really bad early on. I think it was the fall of 2020. And she had a fever, like an 103 to 104 fever for almost 10 days.
Wow.
And she has been 100% better since then. Like no Lyme. It's been almost 2 years, no Lyme symptoms. She
kind of like built-in hyperthermia.
Exactly. No, and it was so interesting. She could never mount a fever before.
Wow.
So, like her immune system was so weak. And granted, this is not always this case, but this, and I know there are some treatment facilities for Lyme. Which one did you go to? The one in Germany? You said that you did
I did
stem
cells in Germany, but they have the hyperthermia in Germany.
They have the hyperthermia. I've had a patient go there before, and basically our fever is our body's way that we kill off infection, and so her body naturally, and COVID, like she's so grateful for COVID. She's like, COVID saved my life. I'm like, well, that's really cool.
That's cool. That's
and
I've
had a couple other patients that have told me that they never got fevers. And then when they got COVID, I rarely get fevers. And I had like 104 fever when I had COVID. And
knock on wood, I haven't gotten it yet.
Oh, good. Well, that's great. I was kind of like, wow, like I was able to mount a response. That's pretty good. And I've had fevers a couple times since then. So granted, I don't wish COVID on anyone. I don't think anyone should get it. But I think, if your immune system is able to mount a strong fever response, that means it has a lot of energy. That means it can go and it might. Because when we are,
maybe because it was such a new disease, or like
I think maybe that spike protein just makes people's immune systems go crazy.
Yep.
So, anyways, I thought I'd share that story.
That's really cool. It's been interesting
because body temperature is so important to, for keeping bacteria and viruses from living in you. Like one of the reasons I'm so like big on thyroid, treating people's thyroids is so many women or men have low body temperature. Like their body temperature went at like 97.
That's me. I cannot get my body temperature up.
Yeah. Well, so and
thyroid. What is it?
Well, yeah, and it can be thyroid and adrenals. And if your body temperature is 97, like that's the temperature 98.6 is what we're supposed to be at. That's the temperature at which most viruses and bacteria can't survive. So if we're a little bit lower, then you're much more susceptible to things. It can be a thyroid. It can be a mixture of thyroid and adrenals. It can be just an adrenal thing. But yeah, I find that when we can finally work to get that up, and that's, cold therapy or cold and warm therapy can sometimes be helpful, like not old. But it's interesting that you had that as well. I see that in a lot of my patients that have had Lyme or had, I don't actually know the research on what mold does to body temperature, but I would bet that it probably like lowers it a little bit.
Brings it down a little bit too. Yeah, absolutely.
Just because of how those things are all connected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mold is a tough one.
Mold is a topic for a whole other thing. Yeah, mold is terrifying. Mold is but it is interesting. So many people that have all the stuff we've been talking about, usually mold has been in there at some point. Mold, it weakens your immune system.
Absolutely. And then
Bad molds.
And then, of course, there's like 30% of the population that has like the HLA-DR gene, which, is more susceptible to Lyme, more susceptible to mold, and like all the different kind of MSH hormones and everything that go along with that. So, if you have that, your body's not even able to just kind of package it as like, this is a toxin, get it out.
Yeah.
It's just in there recirculating. Your immune system and body are working, trying to get it out, but it never gets out. So you've got that going on overdrive, and then all of a sudden you get a tick bite or a virus and all these other things. And it's like, too much.
Yeah.
Can't keep up anymore.
Yeah.
And just really start kind of breaking down. They try to keep up as much as possible, but that's when you have all those debilitating symptoms and don't have the energy to take a shower, don't have the energy to get out of bed, can't think, and it really shuts your body down.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So if you're listening and this is freaking you out, don't be freaked out, because the good news is, so maybe we should start to talk about hypochondriac. So I have to be careful. And I know a lot of my listeners are, so don't worry. There is help. You can get better.
There's hope.
There's hope. And maybe we can talk about some of your favorite ways. Like if someone comes to you and they've got working with some of this stuff, where do you start with them?
I think testing is a good baseline just to kind of see exactly what you're working with, like getting some of those better labs, seeing if maybe more of your issue is mold illness or environmental toxins, which are really a big issue right now too, or is it Lyme? So then you can kind of gear what you're going to spend your money on and what you're going to spend your energy doing. For Lyme, I personally never took antibiotics. I did everything from a more natural kind of holistic approach. So really working on like supporting my body, supporting my detox pathways, making sure that my body is working correctly, using herbals, doing different IVs like ozone and, minerals and detox and things like that. And I feel like working on your gut, obviously, too. And I think that those things are also foundational and important. And at the end of it, you're going to be stronger, more resilient. You're going to be building that bank account instead of just, I think a lot of times people that focus with antibiotics, and it works for some people, which is amazing. Like whatever works, you got to do. But I feel like that focuses too much on killing. And if you're not addressing some of those other things, you're just going to constantly be on this kill cycle. So like working more holistically, I think there's a lot of things that we can do for ourselves too, like nervous system regulation. DNRS can work really well for some people, or doing like heart rate variability to kind of just like calm your body and nervous system response. Diet is a huge one too. I couldn't believe how much changing my diet helped me for the better and change it. And that's something that you have full control over, taking charge of. So there's a lot of things like that, just trying to work as holistically as possible.
Yeah. I think that's a good, and I'll maybe like touch on this a little bit. I think it's definitely important that you're working with one or a couple of practitioners to kind of help you with the diagnosis and help you figure out what's going to be the best plan of action for you.
Yep.
I find in practice, there are some cases where symptoms are so bad, and if they have a positive, that we do need to do some killing, but we also have to you cannot do that alone. Like you cannot just take antibiotics and think you're going to be fixed, particularly if you've got mold and viral, like if there's other things, like the foundational stuff has to be worked on, like the diet, sunlight, sleep, exercise, like the basics, which will help you with it. They're going to help you. As you said, they make you stronger. They make your life better. And then, like we talked about gut support, and I find like adrenal support is really important. And sometimes when my patients come in and they're like already, like if their system and their energy is decimated and they don't feel good, like, as you know, like Lyme treatment can be tough sometimes. Like sometimes you get a little worse when you're killing stuff. So sometimes I find we work to try to like build the system up a little bit. And then we use whatever. And that might be, sometimes antibiotics is the right choice. Sometimes it's not the right choice. Sometimes there's herbal protocols. Or as you said, there's really great IV medicine could be amazing for killing Lyme or any of the tick-borne things like ozone, or I really like high dose vitamin C, which like knocks everything out and also like really helps with the herxing or stuff, because it's just such a good antioxidant. So there are a lot of different options and treatments. And but again, and this is something I harp on like almost every episode, is find a practitioner that knows what they're doing, who can help guide you through this. Clearly, you've got tons of resources and have a lot of experience with this. So, and I like it. Sometimes it takes a team of people, right? Like sometimes you might need someone like yourself. You might need like the Lyme literate doc. You might need like a coach. I think the more support you can get, the better, right? And the faster you're going to get to where you want to be.
Yeah. And, even in my own journey, like I felt like I plateaued with like certain practitioners. Like I did everything that they had in their toolkit to kind of help me and be like, okay, you helped me, but I kind of plateaued. So be like, what else is my next step? And then working with different practitioners or working with them at the same time, obviously not overlapping and conflicting treatments, but like if one person specializes in mold and one's like more like hormone health, like kind of,
work together
based on their specialty.
Which can be a really beautiful thing to do. And I think sometimes patients are like, and I get this question, they're like, well, I want to see you and this other doctor. Is that going to, and they're like, yeah, like it's great. And have the doctor, have your care team communicate, have them chat.
Yep.
Like, and yeah, like you said, don't have, if the protocol, if you're trying to see one doctor for the same thing and you have conflicting protocols, that will be overwhelming. Make sure that you are very clear with your practitioner. Hey, I'm working with this person on killing the Lyme. I'm here to work with you about XYZ. And if you're very clear about this stuff, I think you can get amazing results, like working with your team.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely. And then, with doctors, it's like you see them once every 3 months for 30 minutes. So you can leave a little bit overwhelmed. So that's where I kind of come in, like doing the coaching and supporting clients, especially since I've kind of been through it. So if people need that extra support, working with a coach or working with someone, that's like a little bit more cost effective, but understands what you're going through and can help you kind of manage those day-to-days and, stay on your protocol, or when things come up, how to kind of support you in that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So and you work with people virtually, right?
Yep, virtually. So I can work with you anywhere in the world, basically.
That's amazing.
On time zones, of course,
and
we'll find time.
Where's the best place for people to find you?
They can find me on my website. It's thetrailtohealth.com. And then I'm on Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, socials, all the socials.
She's on all the places. So we'll put all your links in the show notes. So yeah, I think, and again, you guys know I talk about this like every episode. Find somebody to work with that you click with, that you like, that you feel your nervous system feels safe with. But particularly if you're struggling with Lyme, mold, or these things we've talked about today, it can be a journey. Like it's definitely, or like you said, or a trail. It's definitely like, I love that name.
Absolutely, it's a trail to health.
It's a trail to health, and it might take a while. That's the other thing. Like this is if you're dealing with Lyme, it's not like you're going to feel better after maybe if you get the tick bite and you take antibiotics 2 weeks later, immediately. But in a lot of cases, if it's been building for a long time, or if there's some other things going on, it might be a little bit of a journey, which you're going to want someone to help support you through that journey.
Absolutely.
And someone who knows what they're doing too, and who believes you, I think is the other big thing, because I think a lot of people get written off. Oh, you're fine. You're just stressed, or you're just...
Or your labs are perfect. There's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah, you don't have Lyme. Yeah.
I had a couple of those.
Oh, yeah. When you feel that bad and you're like, here's an antidepressant for you. Here you go. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey and for this chat. It was a really, really great chat. You clearly are super knowledgeable about this. And I think you're a great resource. So listeners, if you're struggling, definitely go check Erika out, and we'll put everything in the show notes. And thank you again for being on the show.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to connect with me on social media and leave a rating and/or a review. This helps grow the show so more people have access to this knowledge that leads to empowered healing. Love and light, and see you next week.